Across the mark here, Andy. Okay, item 10, it's not, it's item 11. The tenant participation engagement strategy. And going to take us through that, thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Council. This report provides Council with information on the work undertaken to develop the housing tenant participation and engagement strategy. The strategy is a 4-year one. It's to cover the period 2024 to 2028, with each year having its own action plan to be progressed with outcomes and key aims to be achieved. A copy of the strategy is attached as Appendix 1, and this year's action plan is located on page 12 or page 151 in the Council papers. This strategy replaces the previous one, which was outdated, and members will be aware that the tenant participation area was one which the Housing Service had flagged as failing to meet with the legislative requirements under the Housing Scotland Act. We're pleased to be able to bring this strategy to Council for your consideration and approval, and this, allied with the Service's recruitment to the post of tenant participation officer, has meant that we've been able to make real progress within the area of engagement and participation activity, and we're now back on track in terms of meeting with that legislative requirement. I'd like to thank the Clackmannanshire Tenants Residents Federation for their input to the paper, as well as their other registered tenant organisations and the wider tenant and resident groups for their input in the process. And as I say, the development of the paper, necessarily the development of the strategy. The service look forward to work together with CTRF, the RTOs and the wider tenant and resident base. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Do we have any questions? Councillor Rennie.
Thanks, Convener. It was just in reading through it, this is really welcome to see, but on reading through, one of the main barriers to participation was health reasons, and I just wondered what was being put in place to address that and make sure that people could fully participate.
Thanks, Councillor Rennie. Yeah, that is a good point, and something that we were able to see through the survey that was undertaken, and quite a high percentage of those surveyed citing health reasons as an issue. So what we need to be looking at there is really getting out into the community and finding new ways to engage with people that have health barriers. And some of the things that we've looked at in respect of that has been going out there, as I say, to different areas. So we don't just have events locally in Alloa, we go out to the various different areas and towns across the county, and we look to see how we can best involve people that have health barriers. So that could be hybrid meetings, obviously. We're all well used to hybrid meeting scenarios now. Whereas previously everything would have been in person, and whilst we're very keen to get back to in-person meetings as much as we can, we are looking to facilitate hybrid meetings as well for those individuals that may have barriers to getting out to meet with us in person. I think it's really about understanding the needs and delved a bit more deeply into anyone that is interested in participating with us and understanding what those health barriers are and how we can best help accommodate and allow them to participate.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, Councillor Law?
I was just wondering, just on the one about where do you live, that there seemed to be a high proportion of people from Alnborough compared to the kind of other places. Do they have any idea why that is?
Thanks, Councillor Law. No, I don't, I'm afraid, but it's something that we could certainly delve into. The survey was fairly recently undertaken, and it is something that we're reviewing in terms of some of the greater detail around about that. As I say, we are looking to try and get out into the various areas across the county so that we can promote participation. Some areas, as you've highlighted, are more likely or seem to be more likely to engage with us, but I think if we are able to go kind of around about and take the show on the road, so to speak, then we can hopefully look to get a fairer distribution or an increased distribution across all areas of the county and not just within specific areas. But I think, yeah, that's one that we can certainly look to deal with more thoroughly.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Andy. One thing I was looking at was the youth panel. I'd love to see young people more involved in all sorts of things like this, and having just met with young members of the Scottish Youth Parliament, it's great to see their enthusiasm. So there's quite a high number there that are interested in that. How are we going to make sure that happens then, that we actually take that enthusiasm and make it happen?
Thanks, Councillor Harrison. Yeah, I think that's a good point, and we've actually undertaken a piece of work just recently with our tenant participation officer and a policy officer, working in conjunction with colleagues in education, where we've visited the academies to speak with pupils in S5 and S6 to do some participation and engagement sessions, looking at tenant participation and what it is and what it does and how they can get involved, but also more broadly discussing things like housing tenure. Was there awareness of that? Do they know what the different options are? Do they know what signing up to a tenancy would look like? So as well as we would look to bring young people on board with participation, we're hoping as well to be able to broaden our understanding of housing in general in Scotland, what it looks like locally in Clackmannanshire. But I think that being on the front foot, being proactive, I think we've had really good positive feedback. As I say, it was a good piece of joined up working with our colleagues in education, and it was well received with the pupils as well, who were really quite engaging in the sessions. So I think that's proactive, and we'll look to build on that.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, to be followed by Councillor Coyne.
I see there will be a yearly review and evaluation. Will that be getting reported back to Council?
Yeah, absolutely, that will be reported back, yeah. We've referenced that we'll keep the action plan. So the action plan that's outlined in the strategy is the Year 1 action plan, and we'll update Council on progress. What we plan to do is have that action plan almost as a live document available on the website, so that there's transparency and everyone can see progress against the actions that we've set out in the strategy for Year 1. And we will regularly review that and update members as we go on our progress against it. And then there'll be an action plan for Year 2, 3 and 4 as well to follow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coyne.
Thanks, Commissioner. And on page 159, we get some information about the tenant participation and engagement strategy consultation. Significant datum is 24 responses on citizen space. What does that tell us about citizen space as an effective vehicle? Or what does it tell us about the enthusiasm of your tenants for your plan?
Thanks, Councillor Coyne. Yeah, I think it's a very disappointing response rate, 24. There was a lot of hard work and effort went into trying to publicise the survey, as there always is. And our tenant participation officer in particular was really keen and engaging as much as he was able to through, as you say, citizen space, but also in-person events and publicising through all means possible. I think probably coming back to my earlier point about trying to get out to where people are, I think that's where we need to be looking at that, and perhaps tagging on the other events that are popular and are relevant, if we're able to have a presence to really engage with people where they are. Citizen space, I think, has its place, but I think that we need to, as I said, be proactive and go in and try to seek survey responses and incentivise where we can as well for people to respond and participate. We did last year, I think it was, we did hold an engagement session in a local cafe, hoping that would bring in an increased number. Unfortunately, it didn't do that, but I think it's looking at these different ways of doing things and trying to increase the number and be proactive and go to where the people are. I think that's what we'll aim to do.
Would it be dangerous to make the return in a way compulsory at some point, that something would not happen unless you sent your return in, or is that being a bit too fascistic?
I would hope we could get there without making things compulsory. Look, I think hopefully with increased focus on this, increased resource and the strategy we have in place and our plans to really go and engage with everyone, I'm hopeful that tenants and residents are able to see that there is clear mechanism and means by which they can engage with us and it will meaningfully influence service delivery. I would hope that that would be enough without having to go possibly a compulsory scenario. If they could see that there are routes that they can meaningfully engage and influence, then hopefully that would suffice.
Yeah. I'm sure you will agree, won't you? That is a question. That to base your strategy on 24 responses out of whatever the number is, I can't remember, would be silly, because it's non-representative, utterly non-representative. So something has to be done about it, does it not?
Yeah, I would agree that it's such a small number, but what I would say is that when you go through the action plan, you can see that some of the key take forward actions in there are around about setting up tenant scrutiny panels, the youth panel that Councillor Harrison referred to, and also a tenant-led board. So I think that through realising those very early on in the action plan, we would look to draw in a greater number of tenants and residents to participate in setting out the forward action plan from there, and increase the publicity and the numbers around about it.
Okay, Councillor Benny.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think we're looking at this on the wrong side of the coin here. To me, it actually makes sense, and it's actually good for council that there's only a few people, because they're not complaining. When people have got busy lives and they're just rushing here and there and they're doing stuff and everything's fine with their house, council property and all the rest of it, then they're not going to complain, and they're also not going to engage because they don't need to. Most people will only engage when there's something wrong because their lives are so busy. So to me, that's a positive thing in a way, so that you're not getting an awful lot of people coming up and saying what's right or what's wrong. Just a thought.
Councillor Coyne might point in the direction to frame that as a question. Councillor Forster, before by Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, just kind of picking up on the lack of responses here. I wonder if we're kind of missing a trick, maybe by every year our tenants get like a boiler check. So is there some way of kind of doing some sort of streamlined questionnaire that perhaps the engineer going out could kind of do on our behalf? I've seen on social media recently that that some tenants in Alva had got a letter saying we're coming out to do like a regular kind of tenancy check. So I'm assuming that kind of is staged across the kind of year in different areas. So is there any way that we could be, kind of putting some sort of survey in as part of these visits, just to kind of, I suppose, and improve the numbers and get some real kind of feedback, kind of real time as well?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Foster. I think it's a really good point, and you're quite right in saying that we are in every domestic property every year. We do gas servicing every single year with a tradesperson in there. Yeah, I think we've referenced quick pulse surveys in the action plan, and that could be a means to do that. Whilst we're there in the property, tenants that are willing to participate with us undertake a quick pulse survey. That could be fed back in via a handheld device that the tradesperson has there and then for tenants that are willing. So I think that's something that we could absolutely explore.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering why would someone participate in the survey? Like you say, like things are happening. So how are we selling the changes that are happening that relate to what people are feeding back in the survey to people, so that they want to come along and feed back? Is there something we're giving them? Is there communication we're putting out to them that will kind of sell that to them?
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, I think it's part of what I said just a little earlier. Is about once we can get to this position where we've got the scrutiny panel, we've got the tenant-led board, we've got the youth panel, and we look to promote the DP activity through that. The survey as part of that, sharing the results of the survey, highlighting the fact that we're disappointed with the low response, and work collaboratively to look at how we increase that number, how we share the information that's been gathered, what it looks like, what it means, what does it mean means from the tenant resident perspective, as we're interpreting the information and the data as best that we can, given what's on the paper. But it's interesting to hear from the residents and on their perspective and their views on the survey information. So I think it's that piece about sitting collaboratively working, understanding the content, sharing the contents, understanding them and moving forward from it.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks, Andy. Councillor McTaggart to move the paper.
Thanks, Convener. I'm delighted to see this new tenant participation strategy being presented to Council today. A previous strategy was outdated and had been in need of full refreshment for some time, so this is very welcome. I'd like to thank the officers involved for this work, the work that's gone into this strategy, but of course, as Andy touched on, the document itself tells us that the work has just begun and that this is a live document that will be shaped by the future needs and expectations of our tenants. Since the last strategy was produced, we've gone through a pandemic, Brexit, changes in government, and we're now dealing with a housing shortage and a cost of living crisis. All of these things affect our tenants, and all of them are largely out of the control of local government. However, as the strategy suggests, we aim to work with our tenants, engage with them as individuals and groups to ensure we know what their needs are and their aspirations are, and to do our very best to meet those needs and aspirations within the resources we have. And although the council own the houses, our tenants make those houses into homes and build communities around them. So it's crucial that they have a platform to raise their concerns and to share their ideas with us. It's disappointing to note that the consultation only received 24 responses. However, our tenant participation officer post was vacant for quite some time, and this may be a factor in the poor level of response. But we now have a TPO in post, and I'd hope that through the work being done by Callum and the housing team, we'll see tenant engagement becoming stronger again, and we can build on the elements in the strategy to ensure our tenants are fully represented at all levels. Our tenants can be assured that this strategy is intended to empower them and their communities. It forms part of the engagement process to give them a voice when council decisions are being made about their homes and their communities. I hope to see a growing number of tenants and residents groups emerging as a result of this refreshed policy to strengthen the relationship between tenants and the council and to bring this strategy to life. Thanks, Convener. Happy to propose the paper.
Thank you. Councillor Law to second.
Thanks. I've been in quite a few meetings, like community council meetings or community groups, or even at Tillicountry Gala, where I've seen Callum, the tenant participation officer. So I know I did see him getting out and about in the community, trying to get people engaged. And I know like the response rate is quite disappointing, but I think when speaking to Callum, I know that there was lots of people going up to him and asking him lots of questions. I think it was just then that we couldn't get them that kind of final nudge to actually go out and fill out the survey. And I'm pretty sure also, I think he gave one group paper copies as well, so that kind of what we were talking about before, that people might not want to kind of participate in a kind of digital way. They were kind of trying to get people as much as possible. So I think it's a start, and I think we can maybe look at where we are next year to see how many people are engaged and to see kind of what kind of progress has been made there. But I think it is a good start, and I think it is really important for us as councillors as well, when we're speaking to people, to try and get them to participate in this, so that we can find out what the needs and wants of our residents are. Thank you.
Thank you. The paper is now open for debate. Anybody wish to debate it? No. Okay, so the paper asks Council to approve the tenant participation engagement strategy for 24-28, to note the action plan and the service intention to review this annually, and to note the survey results that are detailed in Appendix 2. We're happy to approve the paper. Thank you. Item 12 is the abandoned property policy. Murray will take us through that. Thank you.
Thanks, Convener, and afternoon, councillors. The paper presented today, as it's stated in the report, is following last year. The County Service produced a wide-ranging list of policies and procedures that were due to be updated and reviewed. So this is the first of those reports coming back to Council, but obviously Monica, as the policy officer, is now working at pace in terms of the other policies and procedures that need to be updated within the service. As Andy had referenced earlier in questions from Councillor Harrison, the service is working collaboratively, especially with our colleagues in education, with Katie Roddy being our champion around the UNCR proposals in terms of the legislation. And I was just checking with Lorraine there that we believe this is the first policy that's come forward to Council which fully implements the UNCR Conventional Rights for the Child in its implementation. So clearly, as the paper states, there's obviously been work done with Allo Academy pupils in terms of that engagement with Callum as the County Participation Officer, and clearly, as indicated in the paper, as one of the requirements, we have to produce a child-friendly policy, which is obviously included as part of the paper policy today at Council. Clearly, the policy itself has been updated in line with recent legislation, and obviously the changes to the documentation are referenced at section 4 in the paper in front of members today. But happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Murray. Do we have any questions? Councillor Rennie?
Thanks, Chair. Just in terms of the child-friendly version of the policy, I have to say I was really glad to see that. It looks fantastic, and I think we should be doing that with all our policies. But just one question, and I understand the need for the policy to be child-friendly for the reasons that you've given, but I wondered if it would be possible to have something similar, just called an easy read version for anybody, you know, because obviously there'll be people who find policies inaccessible for all sorts of different reasons. And like I said, I think this is a principle we should use across all of our policies and processes that go out. But I wondered if, as well as a child-friendly version, there could be a version that's just an easy read version.
Yes, it's a good point, Councillor Rennie. Something obviously we can look to incorporate as Monica moves forward. Obviously make any revisions in terms of this one to make sure it's easy to comprehend and read on the website, and then obviously as we bring forward our policy commitments going forward, we look to make sure that's incorporated as well.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Coyne?
Thank you, Convener. Just following up on Councillor Rennie's point, Murray, a councillor-friendly version would be quite helpful. Let's summarise this. What can happen now that couldn't happen before, and the opposite way around, what can't happen now that could happen before?
So as expressed in section 4, this is really, what Monica's updated really is about the work in terms of the officer investigation, so really make sure that that's much more clearer in terms of how we specify about trying to ensure that the tenancy has been abandoned. Of course, a tenancy abandonment is a failure on our part. The paper illustrates a couple of years ago there was 38 abandonments, last year there was 34. There's a downward trend in the number of abandonments. I think the first quarter there was only 4 this year, so there is still that downward trend going forward. Clearly what the abandonment policy is, it's a failure in terms of we've not got it either right at the start, so then it goes back to the low allocations process about making sure that we're asking the right questions about areas that people want to live in, make sure we get the right size, right type of house to begin with. And clearly, as the paper indicates, going forward is then about how our officers then support the tenants within those homes. Councillor Forson referenced earlier about the home visits that the tenancy management carry out, the yearly visits. So clearly that's an opportunity to make sure that people are obviously getting the right benefits, they're managing their household budget, etc. So clearly the abandonment policy should be seen as actually us in terms of making sure that we're doing everything we can to support our tenants and our tenancies. But clearly it can happen, it does happen. And obviously we want to make sure that we're following the correct legislation in terms of serving the appropriate notices at the right time, and obviously giving tenants the opportunity, if it's been a mistake, to come back to us to obviously obtain the tenancy.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Law?
Just because, because we've got obviously that child-friendly version now, is that something that we're going to kind of put out to schools for, like, so that kids actually are aware of it? Or is it just, I don't know how to come across it, basically?
Yeah, it's something that obviously Andy referenced about some of the youth panels, and it's some of the work we've done with going forward. Obviously, this work is featured at Alloa Academy, but clearly in terms of that implementation throughout the council, clearly this implementation of this Act requires us to take into consideration the views of the child and make sure that that's referenced. So we're obviously going to need to expand that as we're going forward through our policy development. And obviously there's something else in terms of the council we're going to have to take into account views in terms of complaints as they're proceeded on the household as well. So that's something that obviously there's a group working across the council. We're looking at the implementation of this. There's various champions, each of the service divisions who are taking it forward to their own service area. Katie Roddy is the service champion for housing, who's taking it forward with colleagues from education and people directorate.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Murray. Councillor McTaggart to move the paper.
Excuse me. I'd like to thank the housing team and specifically Monica for the work that's gone into this paper. The policy is based largely on legislation, which is an area we can influence. However, we can influence how we interpret and deliver the elements of that legislation and how we prevent abandonments ever occurring. The paper notes that abandonment figures have dropped over the last year, which is an indicator of the work carried out by our housing team to prevent abandonments, working with tenants to ensure that they have as much support as possible to overcome the issues that can result in an abandonment. Abandoned properties are a drain on council resources. They incur additional costs and take up valuable officer time that would be better used elsewhere. So with the work being done by the housing team, I'd hope to see a further reduction in those figures in future months and years. Thanks, Convener. Happy to propose the paper.
Thank you. Councillor Lott, second.
Thanks. Before becoming a councillor, I wasn't aware of kind of any of these sort of policies, you know, and I think sometimes people think that it's just, people just decide things on a kind of whim, so I think it's really good to kind of see it laid out here, and especially as the child-friendly version, just so that, you know, people do get aware that there are these policies, and I really do think it is the child-friendly one is really great, because I think a lot of kids, if they found out about it, then they might speak about it at home, and you kind of get aware of these sorts of things. So I'm glad that this is the first one of many to come. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The paper is now open for debate. Anyone wish to debate it? No. Okay, so the paper recommends that Council approve the revised updated abandoned property policy as attached to Appendix 1. We're happy to approve. Thank you. Item 13 is the audited annual accounts for 22-23, and Lindsay will take us through that this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm pleased to present the audited annual accounts for the financial year 22-23 for approval and ask Council to note the changes from the draft statements that were previously approved last year. The audited annual accounts are being presented later than usual due to a number of challenges faced by the Finance Department and availability of the external auditors to conclude the audit work. Since the draft financial statements were previously approved for audit, a number of changes have been identified and have been made to the accounts, and these are detailed in section 4 of the report. As a result of these changes, the general fund reserves have reduced by 65,000, and net assets on the balance sheet have reduced by 91.6 million. There have also been some additional disclosure enhancements made throughout the annual accounts on the advice of the external auditors. I'm happy to take any questions on the accounts, and the Council's external auditors will also be presenting their annual report on the accounts under the next agenda item. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Do you have any questions? No. Thank you. Councillor Forson to move the paper.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the paper. As Lindsay says, this is the final accounts. We've already seen the draft accounts previously. The changes outlined are in section 4, as Lindsay has said, and I think they're pretty self-explanatory. So these are the report sets out the financial context of the Clackmannanshire Council ending the year 23. It meets all statutory requirements, which is good to see. I think it's fair to say that it has been a challenging year, and I thank Lindsay and all her team for the significant work that goes on behind the scenes in relation to the accounts and all the other financial requirements. Lindsay also highlighted the challenges in their team, which has resulted in the accounts being slightly late. These have already been highlighted in earlier papers in relation to recruitment, etc., and it's something that we have to work with going forward. So hopefully everyone is satisfied with the information within the accounts and we can approve them today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay to second.
Thanks, Convener. You're happy to second. Huge amount of work under these huge amount of pages to go through and scrutinise. But you know, just to reinforce the thanks on behalf of the administration in terms of the work that's gone into this. But nothing further to add. Thanks.
Thank you. So the paper's open to debate. Anybody wish to debate it? No? Okay. Recommendation is that the Council recommends approval of the 2022-23 audited annual accounts, approve the submission of the annual accounts to the Controller of Audit, and otherwise note the contents of the report. I'd be happy to approve. Item 14 is the annual report to those charged with governance and control of audit for the financial year ended 22-23. And it was Sandy Denham, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Take us through the paper. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Got this one here. There we go. Good afternoon all. So I'm the External Audit Manager with Deloitte, and we have completed all of our procedures relating to the 2022-23 annual report and accounts for Clackmannanshire Council. In line with the paper that we have issued, we are issuing a clean audit opinion following the approval of the accounts. Subsequent to our review, there have been a number of updates to the accounts, and we can confirm that the final version is now in compliance with all appropriate regulations, and the remuneration report has also been prepared in accordance with those regulations as well. In page number 4 of our report, there is a section on the outstanding matters to conclude. I can confirm that apart from the signing of the management representation letter, which will happen this afternoon following the approval of the accounts, all of these points have now been actioned. With regards to our audit work, we have identified a material adjustment to the valuation of property, plant and equipment, that has been corrected by management. Further, we have not noted any uncorrected misstatements within the annual report and accounts for you for approval today. We've also completed our wider scope work relating to financial management, sustainability, vision, leadership and governance, and the use of resources to improve outcomes, and our recommendations are in the action plan of our reports, which we have agreed with management. We also have our best value report in the papers today as well, and again, the action plans have been agreed with management for moving forwards. So I'll stop there and open the floor up to any questions that you have on our reports.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Councillor Forson.
Great, thanks, Andy. I've got a few questions for you, if you don't mind. Just looking at page 5 on the report that was actually signed off by Pat Kenny, it said that your aim is to add value to the council by providing insight into and offering foresight on financial sustainability, risk and performance. I just wondered if you could maybe highlight some of the areas where you feel that the audit has added value.
Yes, as part of our wider scope work, we do look at financial sustainability, risk and performance. In terms of the adding value, that would probably be when, specifically on that point, that would be the action plan points that we have agreed. So we have reviewed the processes that are in place at the council, and we have agreed areas for improvement and how they're going to be improved going forwards over the next 4 years of our appointment as auditors. And so for the following year, we will present to you a follow-up on those action plans, how we feel the management have responded to those, and any other areas that we think should be addressed. Hope that answers your question.
Financial sustainability has been quite a focus of this report, and I think it has been for a number of years, and it's certainly not something that we're unaware of at the council. So I'm just really wondering, are you seeing similar concerns in other councils, or is there anything in particular that's more pronounced here in Clackmannanshire?
Yeah, that's a very fair question, and one that was definitely put to us over the course of developing the action plan going forwards. The short answer is yes. I would be surprised if there were any other councils that did not have that as a significant point in their annual report and accounts going forwards. I think it's fair to say that it's a very challenging operating environment at the moment, and Clackmannanshire is certainly not unique in the challenges that it faces with regards to budget gaps and financial sustainability.
Okay, thank you. There was identified concerns about delays in the kind of audit process. I'm just wondering, was that again specific to Clackmannanshire, or if other kind of public sector bodies seen the same delays? And I'm also aware that our team here will be looking at areas of improvement to make sure there's no delays in future. But I'm just wondering what improvements Deloitte might be considering as well, because I do understand there was delays on both sides.
Yes, so Clackmannanshire is not unique in that it is experiencing staffing shortages, and the finance team is stretched. I think, as is kind of drawn out in our report, I think it's fair to say that Clackmannanshire is particularly stretched. I mean, it's the smallest council on the mainland. Recruitment is always going to be challenging. Couple that with first-year audit. It's always different when new auditors come in. So you've had 5 years of one group of people, and then you have someone taking a potentially different approach, which we have done. The other factors which did lead to the delays this year there were some unique factors, specifically the triennial pension fund valuations. So in February this year, as soon as we were aware of that report being available, we then had to consider that for our audit work. So I would not expect that to recur going forwards. But yes, I think it is fair to say that the finance team is quite stretched, but that's not specifically unique to Clackmannanshire. But yes, I would hope in future years we would pull the scope audit back on track and there would not be subsequent delays.
Thank you. Moving on then, the report mentions that we need a comprehensive medium-term financial strategy. And I'm just really wondering, are there any examples of this that are coming forward from other councils that perhaps Clackmannanshire could look to for best practice?
So with regards to specific councils, I mean, it's definitely something that's come up in other councils that we have audited. With regards to making sure that there is a robust kind of 5-year plan in place that is taking all factors into account. I probably wouldn't be able to point you towards a specific council at this point in time that you could use for good practice, but we could certainly point you towards one after discussed internally. But yes, it is a point that does apply to various councils, and obviously within the current environment of funds being quite tight at the moment, it is quite a common thing.
Thank you. I suppose moving on to the transformation side of things, because that again was a focus of the audit. There has been a lot of work going on, and I think that was acknowledged there, although it has been suggested that more work is needed to, I suppose, build on the details behind the project, etc. I'm just wondering, what the evidence is that's suggesting that there's, a lack of detail, because certainly those of us who sit on the Be the Future board receive a lot of papers and a lot of updates on this, and I'm just wondering whether there was any specific examples of where a lack of detail has caused any delays, etc.
Yes, sure. So with regards to the transformation points, for specifics that you're asking about, I think that would be anything that would be referred to in our action plan where things have been lacking. I think this year, so 23-24, is going to be the major year for transformation, because that is the area of focus for the Controller of Audit with regards to the best value reports. So we'll probably be under more scrutiny then, and it has been an area that has been kind of under the microscope a lot more in recent years. So what might have been standard practice in the past might not be so much in the future. But with regards to specifics for Clackmannanshire, per your question, that would be kind of anything that we would mention in our action plan, specifically in the best value reports and in our main audit reports.
Thank you. And last question really, about the audit fee. The report had suggested that there might be a requirement to pay more funds because of delays, etc. I mean, obviously we have to scrutinise, the money that we're kind of paying. I'm just wondering, really, what the extent of these charges would be, but also are you requesting the similar kind of increases in fees from other areas where there have been delays, maybe other public sector bodies?
Yes, so that's a good question. So I guess to take both of your points separately, we would request additional fees when we are required to do additional work over and above the scope which was originally agreed. Now, part of that will also be the triennial valuation work. We weren't expecting to have not signed off by February. However, once we were aware of that report, we had to do a significant amount of work to get comfortable with the final position in the accounts. In terms of specific numbers, that is currently under negotiation, so I know the head of public sector for Deloitte UK is involved in those discussions, and they will be communicated probably relatively soon, I would have thought. It's quite high up on his list at the moment. Specifically for your other question, if we're looking at additional fees for other bodies, it would be the same thing. It would be only when there is a quantifiable additional level of work this is required over and above what we would normally do. So yes, we have requested additional fees for other bodies, where there is a tangible, if something's been delayed and we've had to spend X amount of hours, that would be how we would calculate it. But the hope would be that any additional fees would kind of be one-off. For example, your pensions reports, you can pinpoint that to the extra work our actuaries have had to do on that, and you can put a number on that one, and I would hope that that would not recur going forwards. The fee that is, if the concern is the question, are we going to start pushing the fees up in the future years, it would still remain with what Audit Scotland have communicated to you, and we would not be looking to vary that unless there was a specific area where we can pinpoint additional hours and quantify that reasonably.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, thanks, Andy.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Corson to move the paper.
Thanks, Convener. In moving the paper, I'd like to thank both the auditors and our officers for the work that's gone into preparing the report that's before us today. I'm sure that we can all agree that it's extensive and particularly in-depth. The report includes the 22-23 annual audit and the best value thematic work that was undertaken around about the same time. I'm pleased to note the opinion given that the financial statements give a true and fair view of the state of the offices of the Council. They've been properly prepared in accordance with accounting standards and within legal requirements. I'm also pleased to note the view that there is an effective budget setting strategy and monitoring arrangements are in place, and that the Council continues to be open and transparent. The report also notes progress in our transformation programme, and we know improvements are going through our Be the Future board, and there's significant scrutiny on that ourselves. It will come as no surprise to members across the chamber that the report highlights concerns about the medium-term financial sustainability of the Council. We share these concerns and we discuss them regularly as elected members in the different forums that we have. I think the report recognises that we do place significant concern on this, and that insufficient financial resilience is highlighted as the highest risk in our corporate risk register. I take no comfort in saying that this is not an issue just for Clackmannanshire Council, but is also sector-wide. I think has been highlighted in various reports ongoing from Audit Scotland and other bodies. I would like to highlight the positive comments within the Best Value Thematic report that relates to us focusing on the Council's key priorities and the significant cross-party collaboration and work between officers and elected members. which is key to the success. I do welcome the comments that any kind of main concerns are highlighted in the action plans that set out there, because I thought that was fairly reasonable, and it should be quite easy for us to comply with and make the changes that are necessary. So on that basis, happy to propose the paper.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, second.
Thanks, Convener. I would just formally second the paper and endorse the comments of the Council Leader. Thanks.
Thank you. Paper's open for debate. Anyone wish to debate it further? Councillor Quinn.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I regret I didn't have the opportunity to scrutinise this properly, because it's kind of what I see as my brief, almost in a way. But I hope that perhaps I haven't spoken to the chair of audit and scrutiny, but we might have a look at this report in some detail and track the action points that are going through the year, if it's right for us to do that. I think we should take those recommendations and action points seriously, and we'll follow that throughout. I guess I'm looking for the chair to nod her head in approval or condemnation of what I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Rennie.
Yeah, it's exactly the point I was going to make, Dennis. I felt that this would have been a real opportunity for us to scrutinise, and looking at the forward plan of our Audit and Scrutiny Committee, the accounts and the additional auditor's report were not included in that, but I think it's something, certainly in the IJB, the Audit and Risk Committee will look at the audit report and the financial statements. And like you, I would have liked to have had the opportunity to really scrutinise, so I concur with you on that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Rennie. Any other contributions? Councillor Parsons, what opportunity to sum up? No. Okay, so the paper recommends that we note the content of the independent auditor's report, approve the content of the letter of representation, note the content of the annual audit report, the recommendations for improvement and follow-up on prior year recommendations, and to note the content of the report by the external auditors, best value thematic work 22-23. We're happy to approve. Okay, thank you. We have one final item of business on today's agenda, which we are recommending be an exempt item and be heard in private, given the financial and legal information contained within the paper. We're happy to hear it. Okay, just take a couple of minutes to make sure we've